Hello, everybody. This is The Local Lens, a podcast where we go inside one community's experience with the drug epidemic. This is coming to you from Stanton, Kentucky, a small town nestled at the foothills of Appalachia in Powell County. So on today's episode, we have from the Stanton Police Department, Sergeant Ian Morton, along with the director of the Powell County Health Department, Mrs. Stacy Crase. So the way that this episode came about is very interesting. Sergeant Morton had actually volunteered to be on the show. So once we got the meeting set up, Miss Stacy Crase asked if she could come in and just sit in on the interview and see what it's like to record one of the episodes. So by the time we actually got to the meeting, I had convinced Miss Crase to actually speak up and be a part of the episode. And the conversation that came about that, from having these two different local governments in the same room talking about this same issue, it was very helpful for everyone there. These two different groups got to hear directly from the other one what they were seeing and what their experience was. And that's really exactly what we started this podcast to do, was to have these tough conversations and to be intentional about talking about addiction. So thank you all for tuning in. This is The Local Lens, a project from Powell County Cares, because no one sees it like we do.
My name is Ian Morton. I'm a sergeant with the Stanton Police Department. I've been with the department since September of 15. Born and raised in Powell County. Have a political science degree, undergraduate degree from Eastern Kentucky University. I'm married. I have 3 awesome kids. And that's pretty much it.
Nice.
And I'm Stacy Crase. I'm the recent health department director. I've actually worked in healthcare my whole career, about 18 years. Worked at the health department for most of those years, and then moved into the director role for about 3 months now. I've worked with the issue of opioid crisis and substance abuse for many years with different grants and things in our community.
Good. Great. Well, if you guys would both tell me about your involvement or role in the whole opioid epidemic, and more like whether that's coming mostly professionally, whether that's coming from like your life outside of professionalism.
Most of mine is going to be kind of split, really, but the biggest majority of it's in my career. And my response to it usually is the enforcement of our drug laws in the Commonwealth through statutes, and also we respond sometimes with EMS. Anytime there is a overdose call, there's potentials for hazards for EMS, so they don't just send EMS. Law enforcement responds, make sure the scene's safe. No hazards there for them, and then sometimes depending on if there's other persons involved. We may have to start from helping EMS clearing the scene to enforcing the law. I also, from a personal standpoint, my brother is a recovering addict. He started young, like most of them do, probably 15, 16 years old, and has been on the wagon for probably 3 or 4 years now. So I have it from both sides.
So one of the most common things that the police department has to deal with in these overdose calls is a law called the Good Samaritan Law. And this law grants what is called legal immunity to somebody who calls 911 to get help for an overdose victim. I imagine that's pretty applicable on a lot of your calls.
It is, and obviously I can't say any names, but I recently had a case where I had a gentleman, and with my profession, we're constantly learning, we're constantly evolving because the laws are constantly evolved. But we had a situation where, like I explained earlier, EMS had an overdose complaint. I arrived on scene. The gentleman was passed out, if you will. EMS were able to get him to come to. When he came to, he became violent, which most people do in a situation where they come up from a passed out situation or a dead sleep situation. And, of course, that's one of those hazards that we would get called to. Upon putting him in the ambulance, we don't want the EMS staff to be hit with needles or some type of narcotics. I'm sure you've heard fentanyl is really big, and just a little bit can kill you. We found a little bit of substance on him. Again, this is right when Good Samaritan law took effect in Kentucky, and I sent it to the lab, like any of us would, and it popped back fentanyl. And I took it to the grand jury, or took it to, the grand jury. They indicted, and then his defense counsel filed a motion under the Good Samaritan law, and the case was dismissed. Now, with that being said, it's frustrating that this subject potentially may see this as a get out of jail free card. I overdose, I call the ambulance, they can't touch me. Mm-hmm. Now, that Good Samaritan law is also tailored for you not to be able to abuse it to that way. But, it's a slippery slope when you come to situations like that, because on one hand, I want to make sure my community's safe. I want to make sure that drugs aren't in the street. But at the same time, I don't want people dying because Stacy's too afraid to call on Nate for get him help because she don't go to jail too. So it's a mixed bag. So
yeah. What are some of the ways that it's tailored, that the law is tailored to not allow the abuse of it?
So let's say I execute a search warrant at a residence, and there's narcotics on the table, paraphernalia, whatever. You can't say, "Oh, I'm overdosing," and overdose, and then all of a sudden, boom, the evidence is suppressed. It has to be kind of we were there for the overdose first. Now, granted, if I go to a residence and you're talking about mountains of cocaine or pills, whatever, that's going to be a different story. That's something that we've been discussing with our Commonwealth Attorney and the Attorney General's office as far as how we move forward with, a massive quantity of dope like that. But when it comes to, mere possession, mere personal use, they're going to throw that out. They're going to cite that under Good Samaritan law, and that case is going to be dismissed.
So when I was reading through the law, I think I remember seeing if there's not excessive amounts of it, and
right.
that's where that comes in, right?
Right, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Most people are going to consider it's kind of like they say in the Supreme Court, you know it when you see it. Mm-hmm. You're going to know what personal use is. Now, if somebody has a table full of pills, that's not personal use. But now, if they have a Neurontin or oxycodone or Loratab, and they have one pill, that can be possession under the eyes of the law. But Good Samaritan's going to say, hey, that's personal use. So therefore, it's either not going to charge, or B, it's going to be dismissed when we do charge. So
okay.
Most people are going to be on the same page what personal use is versus trafficking or something like that. Yeah. So
okay, cool. And then, are there any other laws that kind of get as tricky, or maybe not as tricky, but they come up as much as that?
It's not really a law. I know and actually this is a question that maybe me and you can discuss off the air later. But I know a lot of times we have the needle exchange program here, and whenever we deal with and I think basically we let them come get the needles on I think Thursdays when today is maybe, and then when they leave. But now it doesn't give them a free pass, and I think it's a lot of people think is if I stop you at a traffic stop and you've got a couple ounces of methamphetamine and your needle exchange box, they think, oh well, no, I got that from the health department. That's good. No, it's not what it's there for. Now, if you're at home and you have your needle exchange card and your needles, and that's what you're doing your business with, well, I don't condone that, and the law doesn't condone that. That's what that program's there for. That's to make sure that you're not using somebody else's needle and contracting a disease or something like that. That's what that program's there for. But they think, some of these people think that it's a free ride. Oh, I've got my needle exchange card, I got my container here, you can't touch me. And that's one of the biggest things we have to stress. I don't know if you had that problem as well, but they think that that's their get out of jail free card, and more often than not, we have to break their hearts and say, no, that ain't how it works, man. It's not how it works. So
right. I think with both of those things, the Good Samaritan law and the Syringe Exchange program, there's two sides to it, and there's a lot of common sense involved that you could see where one side would take it and run with it, like you said, get out of jail free, and twist the meaning of it. And that's where we have to do the education to let them know this is the purpose of it. So we don't want you to be afraid to come visit us during these hours, because you can't be stopped just for that and anything like that. But on the other hand, it's not go crazy on this day and this time frame.
And one of those subjects, which is kind of upsetting, and again, like I said, as long as it's being used for the proper, to keeping the disease level down and the rate down. But myself and a trooper stopped a car, I believe 2 weeks ago, and I filled 2 of these Coke Zero bottles completely full and had to get my needle container out of needles. And they were a participant in the program, and I'm like, why do you? Right. He's like, I don't use the same one twice. I'm like, why don't you turn these in?
Yeah.
Why? Because what if one of these comes out of your? I mean, I'm sure. Not that you meant to litter, but I'm sure receipts have fell out of your car or something like that. We've all done it.
Right.
What if that needle gets out of your car and a little kid picks that up? I mean, that's awful. So I mean, that's the far extreme of it. Like I said, granted, I know the program does great things, right. But again, like you said, there's people that want to always step over that line, that habitual line stepper. So that's one of the things that we have to look out for.
Yeah, we have to remind the participants, quite a bit that this is an exchange program. It's not just a giveaway. So there's an expectation that these will be exchanged, and this is the reason why. And we tell them this could be stopped. If it's not working that way, if we're giving out a whole lot more than we're getting, then we can't afford to keep that program running, and the public health measures aren't being met. So it's constant education again, just so that people know the purposes of these programs.
Do you think that message gets across to people when they're coming in for the exchange program?
I think for the most part, the majority, but there's always new people. We get each week we'll have new participants and people that relapse, and so there's always a constant need for the education. But for the most part, we see a lot of people that are really appreciative of the program and they follow the rules. So.
I was walking on Hatton Creek Road a couple days ago, and just like right there on the road there was a needle, and I was like, man, that didn't get where it was supposed to go, I'm sure.
No. Do you think, as far as being an officer out and about, have you seen a decrease in that since we started? Or?
I would say there's probably a decrease in what I would refer to our peak clientele that are local. But now, again, you're going to have your outliers. You're going to have people that they don't care what you tell them. They see that as a way to get their needles. And then you also have the out-of-towners. I mean, people that come. We have the Burt T. Combs Mountain Parkway. The amount of drugs that pass through that parkway, because we always see KSP run an interdiction. We try to run interdiction through the parkway. But with the amount of that's your pipeline to Eastern Kentucky. So you're constantly getting people getting off the 22 exit. When I first started, this is just prior to the needle exchange program, you had 1 to 2 needles, and they kind of used those needles until basically they broke or they didn't work. But now, you're seeing a lot. I would say, as far as from your locals, your repeat offenders, your ones that have been doing this a while, they're not on the radar anymore for this paraphernalia. They're trying to use the program to their advantage. And that's what they're doing. But again, like you said, you have with the Burt T. Combs Mountain Parkway and that access, you're going to have some of your out of town folks that do stop off here and. Drugs isn't just a problem in Powell County. It's a problem nationwide. So, you're going to have some of that come in and out. So, but for the most part, I think we've seen a little bit of a decrease.
Well, I know one thing that really sparked the program even getting approved and getting underway was a study by the CDC that came out, and I want to say it was about 2015. They ranked the counties as far as on the cusp of a HIV and hepatitis outbreak, and Powell County, Kentucky was number 15 in the nation for at-risk, and Wolfe County, our neighbor, was number 1. So when your neighbor's number 1 and you're number 15 in the nation, it was something that really at the health department kind of fueled getting that program. And Kevin Hall from Lexington, they had already had it, and he's a local, so he helped that. So I want to think that in the last 5 years, because we've been able to work on and start that program, maybe we've improved our rankings and slowed that.
I want to say from a personal standpoint, in my line of work, the occasion you run into somebody that has an open wound or they're bleeding, whatever the case may be. About 2 years ago, I had to be tested for I had a gentleman that didn't want to go quietly, and a scuffle broke out. He ended up bleeding, and I had an open cut on my finger, about half an inch long, from in the garden. It's crazy of all things. Went to put handcuffs on him, his blood, in my wound, and he said he was hepatitis C positive. So for an entire year, I had to get poked and prodded to make sure that it didn't transfer. Now, from what they tell me, it takes a pretty good amount to transfer, but there's still always that fear. Am I taking this home to my wife? Am I taking this home to my kids? So granted, thankfully, I came back negative on everything, but it just. That's one of those things I think you all are trying to alleviate, that the potential for transfer and potential of contracting through that program, and then obviously onto the other people. So I'll be perfectly honest. When it first came in, I was one of those guys. I'm like, this is not going to work. Right. This is going to be the worst thing ever. And I will say, I believe we are seeing a decrease in the number of needles we. But again, it's all about education, making sure they understand this isn't a get out of jail free card.
Even working in public health, I felt the same way. So I can see if you didn't work in public health and you weren't educated on the reasons for the program, I could see why people would be against it, because even working in the office where it goes on, it just sort of feels wrong. Especially in the beginning, you think, I just don't know about this. What are we doing back here? But it takes some education in it and learning about the public health reasons and what the benefits are. And it's still not the most comfortable thing. I don't think for anybody that works there, except for the ones that have worked in it, and had more experience. The more you are educated, the more you work around it, I think the more comfortable you get. But we have. People express their opinions to us and in the community, and for the most part, I feel like it goes well. But I do understand where people are coming from, and hope that we have the opportunity to educate more people about that.
So in the public health world recently, there's been a push for seeking improvements, for making things a little bit better, and that approach is called
harm reduction. As the term that we're using for these programs. So. It's definitely taken a front seat in public health. So we've had many opportunities. We actually, last year they had a harm reduction summit in Covington, and we closed the health department, and everybody went because we thought it was important for even from the clerk to the nurse, every position in between, to get that education, so that, when you work there especially, you need to be able to answer questions about it and feel good about it.
Is there any specific story that you can recall, Officer Morton, that has kind of changed or shaped your whole view of the opioid problem?
I'll say it kind of relates to the stigma. When you first get in this line of work, you think it's very black and white. It's very good versus evil. There's a lot of gray area when it comes to enforcing the law. And when you see these people, and young and old, you think, well, they're turds. They are the scum of the earth. I can't believe they would put this type of stuff in my hometown. And then the late Deputy Robert Matthews, Packard Sheriff's Office, we were discussing situations like that, and he's like, no, he said, you got it all wrong. He said, most of these people, he said, yeah, there's some people that's what they want to do. They just want to get high. That's what they've all want to do. But a lot of these folks, especially your older folks, they got hooked on it from the pain mills back when they first started out. When he said that, and that not everybody's a turd, that some people just bad situation. That really resonated with me, and so it came from there's another scumbag. It's doing dope in our streets. That person got a problem. Maybe me doing this, maybe me putting them in jail today will help them get the help they need. And then of course you have so many things have changed since then between Casey's Law and drug court, and there's so many different avenues for them to use now. So it's definitely, that him saying that resonated with me, and it's definitely changed my perspective from, they're all turds to, these people got problems and some of them we can help. Probably most of them we can help. But again, you're going to have those some that don't want help and there's no help for them. So probably that.
Just a quick side note for the listeners. Sergeant Morton just gave us the greatest quote of all time. Not everyone's a turd. Okay, forgive me for interrupting. Let's get back to it.
And it's somebody's mother or sister or daughter or son or husband or, and there's people that are really hurting for these people and praying for them and, they're people and so they're a life like every other life that public health tries to improve and save. And I think for me, one thing that really helped me as the program started was we started seeing people that would come for the Syringe Exchange and then ask about treatment. And so it's not only about the syringe, in itself, but would they ever have encountered a friendly face to say, I might not want to do this anymore. What can you do to help me? And so it's building that trust with our employees and being able to get to treatment. So we've had some of those success stories, so that really helps.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see. So let me ask you this too. With your brother, how old was he when
Probably 15, 16, about when he was able to drive. I mean, not that played a role in it, but definitely makes it easier for you to go to the local dope dealer's house and make that purchase. So, somewhere that age, I mean. So.
Yeah, and that's not very old.
No.
No.
I mean, we had kids, 11, 12 years old, and I'm sure you've seen them too, that, already addicted. I mean, already addicts, and it's awful young. I mean, granted, there's no appropriate age to be addicted, but I mean, it's not like it. It's not some 75-year-old person or 50-year-old person popping oxys in the back. It's our kids, it's our family, it's our brothers or sisters, our wives, our kids, and that's what we have to convey to people. Everybody's life. Everybody's life, if you look hard enough, has been affected by this opioid crisis. I mean, like I said, I used earlier, my brother, I mean, he's just 2 years younger than me, raised in the same household, same parents. I'm a police officer, and he's a recovering drug addict. I mean, you on paper, when you look at that, when we're 11, 12 years old, you think, well, they'll be fine. It affects people differently from all walks of life, whether you're a millionaire or you're dirt poor, white, black, whatever. I mean, it affects everybody across the board. And if you look hard enough, somebody in your family or somebody has been affected by the opioid crisis. And I think it's what we need to do is to get a conversation started, so that way people understand that it's just not, there goes that Crase girl, her kid's a doper. No, you may have somebody in your family that's a doper. I mean, you may have somebody that's abusing narcotics, whatever. So I think the conversation is probably the best avenue we can do to fight the stigma on that.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do with the local lens. We want to break down the barriers. We want to make it easier to have these conversations and for people to feel like they can actually reach out and get the help that they need. Because just like Sergeant Morton said, it reaches everybody in our community. It affects all of us. But that's all the time we have here today. I would like to thank WSKV for broadcasting our show. I would like to thank the Powell County Health Department for making it possible for us to do the show. And then, more than anything, I'd like to thank Sergeant Morton for being on the show and being open, talking about what he sees, and also to Ms. Crase for contributing to the conversation. So from the Powell County Cares Project, this is The Local Lens. I'm your host, Nate Brooks. Thanks for listening today. These are our people using our voices, telling our stories, because no one sees it like we do.